Today, I celebrate what it means to be a woman and also really what it means to be a man. So today's talk is really about three things. Number one, I want to talk about the crisis of womanhood, why there is a crisis. I want to talk about strategy to reclaim what it means to be a woman and also casting a vision for a new woman. What is the kind of woman that we need in a culture right now? So as we know, if I fall, Joe, you can catch me. I moved here from the Philippines when I was 7 years old. And so my parents, who had a business there, left a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old, because that's what you do. You come to the land of the free. And I still remember my mom saying, January, you come to America because it's just. It's a place where you have opportunities and dreams, and it's a place where people are honest. And I remember thinking, that's what America is. And I remember my parents would call once about every 2 weeks, and it was $1,000 at that point. And you leave. Can you imagine leaving, a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old? But I remember thinking, that's what you do because you have this place called America. And so I remember when everything kind of came out the last 5 years, which we understood the institutions were under attack. There's such a massive crisis, injustice, all the things that have come out in politics of Hollywood. It almost felt like a tsunami of awareness of saying, what happened? And I remember speaking to my spiritual director and thinking, to be honest, I feel like it's a state of grief. To a point where, how did we get here where we have men dressed as women in high schools, in libraries? I mean, it's just sort of like in our face. But the reality is that we're sort of swimming in this, we've come to realize just how massive the world, I would say the crisis. And I think where we are right now is that we're seeing the crisis of a world, lack of morals, lack of objective truth. And so we're kind of in this place where, okay, here we are. What do we do about the crisis in our culture? But the good thing about the crisis is that its crisis means turning point. It made us aware that, okay, we can't continue in this situation, and I think we brought an alternative media, brought patriotism. It brought sort of, I want beauty, not fluff beauty, but I want real beauty. I want standards. I want a life where we're actually healthy and not manipulated to be healthy. I think there's a return to faith. I think what we're seeing is a return to order, to truth, to beauty. And I think what we're seeing in the crisis of womanhood is that, wait a minute, I no longer want the model that Hollywood has presented to me. Right? But what is the model of woman? Right? What is it that we say for about 200 years ago, women had limited freedom, controlled freedom, no freedom, to now unlimited freedom? The question we have to ask ourselves is, are women free in spite of all the freedom that we have in the West? Are women free? Are they free to flourish and become who they were created to be? And it's a real question we have to ask ourselves, because we now have data to know that 1 out of 5 women are what? An antidepressant? Okay. And so I guess if I were to ask you, just a kind of audience, just raise your hand. 0 to 10, do you think women are flourishing today? Give me a number. 5? Anyone else? 6? 1? Why 1, you think? Just curious.
I believe true femininity is under attack.
Yeah.
By the woke ideologies, by the liberal world.
Yeah.
They want to just destroy the family. They want to do it by attacking women.
Yeah. Well, right now, data tells us actually, in spite of all the freedom that women have in the last 100 years, actually, women's well-being have gone down, both men and women. And so the question is, in spite of all the freedom that we have, why are women not flourishing? We have to ask the right questions. And so I want to talk about, what are the causes of the crisis of womanhood, which impacts directly the crisis of men and families and our culture, right? Because women are called to be nurturers of humanity. So let's talk about what I would say, one of the things that we have to think about is the influence of technology in women's nature. So women, by nature, we have a womb because we were made for the other. Isn't that a beautiful thing, that we have a womb that allows and makes room for another person? But what happened with technology is that it happens so fast, right? We can't even keep up with AI right now. And so what happened is that our capacity as nurturers of humanity has been disrupted. Why? Because we're on the cell phone, we're constantly distracted, and this was the norm. But now this is the norm. We don't question it, we don't think about it. And so what we have is sort of a disruption of what our nature to be nurturers of humanity. we have normalized isolation, which loneliness is an international crisis right now. Why? Because we have shallow conversations. We go around and we have conversations that does not have the level of depth that's necessary to nurture us the way we ought to be nurtured. But as women, we are nurturers of humanity, so we not only need it, we actually are hungry for it. But then we're going around because what? Life is so busy and we're so available, and so we're going from one thing to another. We are incapable of processing, who am I? Why do I want? What do I not want? So we're going, and we have opportunities galore in a world of technology. So what do we have? Mental exhaustion. We have burnout at home. Mothers are burnt out. And we have burnout what? Also in organizations. So what we have is this idea that being a woman is just, we just accept it, that we are supposed to always stress, always overwhelmed, and always anxious. It's sort of the norm, and you know that because when you go to college campuses, it's the conversation, right? Oh, I'm so stressed. Life is so hard, right? Another root cause of so much of the crisis right now is this idea of false equality, right? Because right now, this idea of equal means that we have neutralized gender. Right, that you can have a gender-neutral bathroom. If you look at the fashion shows right now in Paris runway, you can't tell what a woman or a man is. We've normalized something that is abnormal, right? That we have to change language in our culture, right? To fit what? The gender-neutral human person. That we can say, you know, boys and girls can be educated differently. We now have data that you can't educate a girl the same way you can educate a boy. And that we have feminized our boys because our education system is actually tailored for women. And so what we have is this sort of confusion, and then we've got this language of, you know, masculine energy and feminine energy that's even more confusing. So a woman can have a feminine energy and a man can have it's so convoluted. And yet we're going so fast and we're thinking, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that we have diluted our nature as both man and woman for the sake of independence. I am woman, hear me roar, right? This is what you hear about the memes. The smartest woman is someone who never needs a man. The future is female. Really? We kind of need the men to have a future. Right? And so when you think about we invalidate our gender, we have also invalidated men's contribution to humanity. As though we never needed men. As though we never needed your contribution to do the things that we can't do because our wombs make us vulnerable. There's just things that I cannot do. Thank God for my husband. My husband faints when I give birth. Yesterday, I was in the hospital, I'm literally helpless. And we invalidate good men's contribution to humanity. And we do it, we make fun of it. We started with the Al Bundy, and you look at the TV shows, we've diluted the value of manhood. And women have done it. We have lost this reverence because I can do whatever a man can do. This idea of reverence for what it means to be a woman is now lost, and these are the role models that we have. This is what your children and grandchildren have to see. Can you imagine just a desecration of what it means to be a woman that is capable of carrying another life? And this is what we have come down to. That for the sake of equality, we have lost the beauty of complementarity. But see, the beauty is that we're ready for it. We're seeing, this is not a sustainable model of the world. We need to do something different. That we need to understand that we're equal and different, and that we are made for each other. And finally, because of all the things that came out, the world is finally ready to hear it. I think our hearts are finally open to number 3, objective truth. I remember Jordan Peterson was speaking, and I was speaking casually. He's like, it's the end of the Enlightenment. And I remember pondering that. I said, it's the end of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a period where you became God. You didn't need a moral authority. But what we have seen is that when we can't even define a woman is because we've become our God. Well, your truth is not my truth, right? This is the narrative and the conversation, that we have men in women's locker, and somehow it's all normalized, that we can change the word mother to birthing parent to accommodate people who are confused, that we can say, it's not pedophilia, it's minor attracted person. This is the magnitude of absurdity that has awakened your heart and the hearts of really, I think, America and the world, and say, I'm not signing up for that. I no longer want that magnitude of insanity. So what we're seeing is, okay, where do we go from here when we've gone through mass psychosis? Just think about this. The woman of the year is a man. But here's my question. Where are all the men and the women who said this is okay? You know, when you have the Paris runway show, and then there's, if you look, I don't really watch the runway in Paris, but I study this, and they have this sort of androgynous person, and it's covered in blood, and I say, is the person taking the picture crazier than the person actually walking? I can't tell. This mass psychosis where we think this is all normal. That we've normalized something that is so abnormal that now we have what? I can't keep up with all the genders. But what this is showing is that you cannot have a culture that is not rooted in truth. That it's now an unsustainable model for humanity, and we're seeing it out in the open. Maybe we never saw it before, maybe it was always there, but now we're saying, you know what, it's actually so insane, there's no way we can continue a world like this. But the beauty is that we're hungry now for truth, beauty, and goodness. This is an exciting time, I believe, to be a woman, because there's a return to beauty, a return to truth, and a return to goodness. And we know that because we want the new beautiful cathedral. This is Ballerina Farm, and if she was just in the New York Times, you would never have somebody who's conservative in the New York Times. We're seeing a shift chosen. We are seeing a new hunger for it. We're seeing a rise of a new model of women. Where before there was a liberal monopoly, right? Melania Trump was never in vogue. But now we're seeing, whoa, who is this woman? Who is this woman? Why is there all of a sudden this woman that's sort of rising is actually rooted in truth? There's goodness in them, there's faith, there's freedom, there's patriotism, there's wisdom. We're looking for who this woman is. What kind of a woman do we need for such a time as this? We know that there's a crisis. What is the opportunity that you and I have to introduce a new model of woman that's going to replace the old model of woman? Because right now there's a void. Would you say that there's a void? We're saying, if you look at the data, Hollywood, nobody's watching their films. Nobody's watching all the whatever Globes Award, which I don't follow, right? And we're saying, who is she? Where is she? So this is the opportunity that you and I have. What we do now is that we can reclaim a new vision of what a woman is for the future. We have to cast her vision. We have to know who she is. We have to sell the world on who this vision of a new woman is for such a time as this. And so what I want to introduce to you are just strategies. How can we truly change the trajectory of culture? What can you and I do, both men and women? Okay. So I'm going to share with you 6 strategies that I truly believe that we can move forward to reclaim the beauty and dignity of what it means to be a man, a woman, which directly impacts a man. I'm going to make it to Matt Walsh's documentary, and that's not good. So number 1, introduce a grassroots movement of human formation school. What does it mean to be human? So when I was, I've always trained women for 25 years. And I remember the first 15 years, I would teach women to draw closer to our Lord. This is about developing an intimacy. But what I was doing is teaching them to build a routine, say no to themselves, develop boundaries. I was doing a lot of the human formation that was necessary as a foundation for their relationship with God. And it was very clear God was saying, January, we need a formation school for women. But imagine this, women today come up to me and say, January, I've always wanted to be a mom. That's always been my dream. January, I have 1 child. I can barely take a shower. I don't even know who I am. I'm a hot mess. I cannot believe this was my dream, and now I don't even know who I am anymore. I mean, this is a common narrative. And so the question I always ask women, did God design motherhood to be hard? Yes or no? I'd like to know. Yes? Did God design motherhood to be hard? So let's talk about this, because this is the narrative. And, if you ask women today, 1 out of 5 opt out of motherhood. They don't want to be a mom anymore. We're seeing a lot of women that say, I'm going to get my tubes tied. It's a whole movement. I just saw yesterday, there was a party because she was tying her tubes. I mean, this is the narrative that we're seeing. So this is what we hear, I can take another sick spell. Sleep deprivation is so hard. I'm constantly thinking about, milestones in development. The whining gets to me. I always feel like I'm rushing around. So many people have opinion about how I parent. And I always ask them, is this what God wants? And this idea of mom who's a hot mess, can't even pour her own coffee. And we create narratives like good moms have sticky floors, laundry piles, dirty ovens, and happy kids. Is God a God of order? Have we assumed that motherhood is supposed to be a place of chaos? Why? I mean, just think about it. Where did you learn how to be a mother? Right? Doctors, nurses, soldiers, 4 years, 10 years, years and years of training. But where do we learn how to be a mother? The moment we pop a baby. Is that too late? What are the skills that women need to transition smoothly into postpartum? Okay? What about mind management when the baby cries? What about emotional command so you don't cry when your baby's crying? What about developing an ordered and consistent routine? What about saying no to yourself or saying no to other people who's asking, 10 things from you? What about asking for help? What about honoring your limits? You know what? I just can't. What about prioritizing your day? What about pivoting, recalibrating, organizing, healthy boundaries, cleaning efficiently? In my home, I train my children. I time them when they clean the kitchen. I said, you have 3 minutes to do that, and we're going to redo that again. Why? Because I know that if they don't learn efficient kitchen skills, it's going to impact what? Their purpose. And I know this because training thousands of women, I realized January, I really want to do this. I want to build a business. I really want to start, a pregnancy center, but really, I can't even barely do my own house. I'm a hot mess. Is it their fault if nobody trained them how? Do you think that we need to give mothers some of these skill sets that are necessary to prepare them for the most beautiful gift of motherhood? No wonder mothers are just in survival mode. What about skills to thrive as a mother? What about managing critics when everybody tells you, well, this is how you should mother and this is how you should mother? What about how to fail forward? Because we're going to fail as mothers. What about learning how to find the right role models or just communicating your needs? Honey, this is what I want and this is what's important for me right now. What about seeking the good in every situation and laughing at the fact that, I'm speaking more, I'm just going to find a way to make my heels look good on the left side. Looking for things. These are things that mothers need. Let me ask you a question. Who got this training prior to motherhood? Would motherhood be as difficult? Would we have narratives as motherhood is hard? That in order to be a good mom, I have to let go of myself. Let me ask you a question. If we had this level of training, would motherhood be this difficult? Or would we have difficult moments that we can endure with grace, sacrifice redemptively, and make it look so good for and with God? Do you think that we have deprived women of the formation that they need? How many skills does a mother need to manage her home? Child's crying, she's doing homework, she's trying to clean kitchen. Right? What about being a woman of your word? So you do things and you're going to do things well. What about condensing time? I was just training a woman who's like, Jenny, I feel like I'm overwhelmed. There's so many things I need to do. I said, let's learn to condense time. That's a skill. When are you going to delegate time to do X, Y, and Z? This is just a skill. They just don't know how. And in a world that's going a million miles an hour, learning to condense time and order time is non-negotiable. Otherwise, you're going to always feel overwhelmed, right? What about learning to delegate? I always ask mom, okay, so a baby's crying, you're cooking, right? Somebody's doing homework, your husband comes in, right? And you're giving a boundary to your 17-year-old. How many skills does a woman need in that 3 minutes time? Honey, I love you. No, you may not do that. Hey, honey, welcome home. No, thank you, you're going up in your room. Can you get that pot in the back? Hey, can you make sure you clean up? Hey, babe, how was your day? To compliment your spouse, to learn how to draw boundaries in that 2 minutes, how many skills does a woman need to master? And we expect her to thrive in motherhood when we have not prepared her enough. So what's the cry of the woman? I'm not good enough. Is it that she's not good enough or she hasn't been prepared enough? Do we need a movement of new human formation to equip the mothers? Yes. Think about the teenagers. If your teenager does not know how to manage her mind, her emotion, she is going to be susceptible to manipulation. This is my daughter the other day. She's like, Mom, I gotta go because I'm late. I was like, oh, no. If you're gonna run in haste and you can't manage your mind and you can't order your priorities, then that means you're not capable of your freedom, right? And I just recently, she sort of kind of lost her temper. I'm sure your kids never lose their temper. She sort of lost her temper, and I said, freedom comes with responsibility. You're going to need to you need to know what to say to yourself when you're frustrated. That's 500 scripts that you have to rewire in your brain to say, I'm in command of my emotion. I know when to say no to myself. And come back when you're ready. But here's the thing. We think teenagers are just emotional. Yes, they are. Actually, there's now evidence that our teenagers actually have high estrogen, and that their brains are actually developing differently than men, and they get emotional, but that's when you equip them. That's when you teach them the skill of mind management and emotional command. That's when you give them firm boundaries. That's when you teach them the script to actually have a boundary for themselves. Because guess what? If they don't have the boundaries, they're not going to be hold true to the boundaries. They need to give themselves boundaries for the world. Our teenagers need skill after skill. Let me ask you a question. With the skills that I've given you, what are the skills that I think we can teach our teenagers so that there's no collateral damage, like diffusing drama? My daughter comes in and says, like, Mom, everyone is stressed in my school. I don't know why. Everyone talks about they're so anxious, their friends are stressed. I said, why? I said, why? She said, because they use all the stress language, and the reticular activator tells them they're stressed. And because our girls need to understand, our girls need to know how to dream. If your girls and teenagers don't have a vision, they're susceptible to manipulation, because without a vision, we perish. Every child needs to understand their vision, needs to know how to do that as a young little child, to dream with and for God, right? How many skills do you need to honor a strong marriage? Is marriage hard? Did God design marriage to be hard? Or are there hard moments that require deep formation, both from the men and women, that if they just had the formation that they need, marriage would actually not feel the same? If they know that 7% is words, 38% tonality, 55% body language, and the way they communicate. I tell a couple all this, that's the basis of communication. So you tell me you went to pre-K and didn't understand the basis of communication. And then you have a communication problem. We fix all the symptoms of marriage, of motherhood, and we have a mental crisis, but we don't get to the root of the crisis, which is what? A lack of formation. Can you imagine the working mom skills that they need? I think you're kind of getting my point, right? And so now what we have is anxious mom, broken marriages, overwhelmed, chaotic. Comparison is a disease. But if you're constantly having to feel like you're not good enough, you are going to be tempted to compete and compare, right? So this is where we are. Training is not optional to become the right wife, to be a mother, a friend. Women need the formation. We teach hundreds of skills in a school, in the women's school, and you can see the difference because as a woman, if you have the skills, you're able to give it to your children because it's not what's, taught, it's what's caught. And if a woman doesn't know how to manage her mind, she's not capable of managing her daughter's mind. Right? She can't tell, like, no, you don't use those words. Those are illegal words. And so we need to make sure that we hit the mother, because here's the thing. Overwhelmed just means underskilled. How many women today are overwhelmed? I tell women, so what are you overwhelmed? Tell me 3 skills that you think to overcome your overwhelm. Is it time management? Is it mind management? Is learning how to compliment your spouse? Maybe that's a skill that you need. So when we think of overwhelm, we have to think, what skill do you need to overcome that? What is the biggest collateral in an overwhelmed woman? I feel like I'm putting my teacher hat. What is the biggest skill, the biggest collateral damage to an overwhelmed woman? She has no capacity to create, contribute, and connect deeply. We live in a world where we are in a crisis in our country. If I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed, inevitably stress makes me what? Selfish. Not because I want to be selfish, but because stress in your brain actually looks like a lion is chasing you. And when you're chased by a lion, it's not the time to say, how can we change the world? How can I compliment my husband? What can I do to create an environment that flourishes? No, you're just trying to survive laundry because nobody taught you order. Nobody taught you to get up in the morning to build a routine. And so what happens is the collateral damage of a woman that's overwhelmed is she's incapable of seeing the needs of culture, the needs of the home, her husband's need. This is sad, but it's true. How many couples are now, I ask them, life is so hard, it's so stressed. I'm like, what does your husband need? I never thought about it, January. Why? Because stress makes us selfish. Not because we want to, but because being chased by a lion is on survival mode. Right? And this was my mentor, Elena. She's my spiritual director, actually, in Steubenville. When I was there, I was so broken. And so I met her my first month, and she said, January, what kind of woman do you want to be? And I remember saying, Elena, you don't have a choice. And she said, yes, you do. Let's form you. So for 3.5 years, I met with her. And this is the paper that I had to hand over every single month, except for the summer. And my first homework was to get rid of comparison and competition. So I don't walk in a room sizing every woman up and wondering why I'm lonely. Number 2, to wake up every morning so I can study, pray, and exercise. And number 3 was to make my bed, to make sure that I was accomplished first thing in the morning. So for 3.5 years, I met with her. And so this habit built, 4 kids, 6 kids. She trained me. So I'm sharing this with you, not to impress you, but to impress upon you that formation doesn't end. The training doesn't end. At every season of our life, we need to what? Continually form ourselves, because what's going to happen is that, I'm comfortable. The greatest enemy of our capacity for greatness is comfort. I've arrived. No need. I've got it. I've got it figured out. I've accomplished many things. Well, what's the next dream? What is it that God is asking of you? And so I felt like what we have in our culture is that we live in an information world, right? And so information, I'm reading, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm hearing people speak like right now. But see, information could be also mistaken as transformation. But we know that I am does not equal, I know does not equal I am. Knowing does not equal to being. We have to introduce formation. So what I know, I need to train, right? It's like me reading about how to swim and becoming Michael Phelps. That would be really nice. But we can't. And so we have to introduce a formation school for women so that we take what we know and we incarnate it, so now we can live it. We have to introduce information plus formation. Now we can have radical transformation. And not only that, we do it in every season. There's formation that happens for teens, for single young women, for married. There's formation that happens when you have 2 babies and 4 babies and 8 babies. I still get up an hour to train every morning. It's still part of the way of life. Why? Because Elena has trained me, but I also know the collateral damage if I don't. So what if we create an infrastructure where women were always studying themselves for the sake of becoming a greater vessel for truth, beauty, and goodness? And why are we not doing it? Why do we think that we can assume what we know is who we become? Here's the thing, is that your purpose will be discovered through your formation. That what God is asking of you. And so we imagine if we gave women how to manage opinions of other people, how to dream, how to manage your emotion, right? How to say no to yourself. These are just skills that are non-negotiable, because what we offer in the Human Formation School is generational flourishment. Because if you know how to actually be a woman, understand your gift as a woman that's uniquely to you, then that's how you communicate to your children. And that's how we change generational formation. Because you can't tell your child, this is how you manage your emotion, when you're a hot mess. When you have hundreds and hundreds of skills that you know how to do, guess what? Your household changes. Your marriage changes. Number 2, we need to introduce what it means to rewire your unconditional worth. So when a baby is born, she's born with hundreds of billions of neurons, right? But a baby doesn't know she's valuable. How does a woman know she's valuable today? Right? How does a woman know she's valuable today? Right? So I know what a pen is because for decades, through the process of repetition called neuroplasticity, I know that a pen is a pen. When I first started driving, I didn't know how to drive, but through the process of repetition, I can now drive, eat, listen to music. Why? Because it's now hardwired, right? We now know it from a subconscious level. So if your daughters, women come up to me all the time, why does my daughter not believe she's beautiful? I tell her she's beautiful. Well, for years, when she's going to the grocery store, she's looking at the magazines and beauty was defined. Her worth was defined. She's watching Taylor Swift, right? And it's all happening, subconsciously. It's all happening, getting wired under her brain through the process of repetition. And then she sees her mom not believe she's beautiful. She's never heard her mom say, I'm beautiful. She's never heard her mom say that. And because her mom too has been conditioned to believe that beauty is external. And she doesn't hear her father say, your mom is beautiful. And so now she says, well, I don't believe I'm beautiful. Because for decades, we have a false metric of women's value. How do we define women's value today? Right? We call this a poisonous pea. What we can produce, everybody's clamoring, right, for the Ivy League, although Harvard's in trouble right now, so maybe that's not a good slide. But think about it. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you're like, I don't belong in a place where everybody's going to Harvard. You start to what? Doubt, Because what we think our value is based on what we can produce. And we know it from the little girl because an A student, we celebrate her, the trophies, so we've conditioned her from her little experience that what you produce makes you valuable. And then we have a culture that says, well, if you have more likes, you're more important, right? And we know this, it's just happening subconsciously, right? That we think, well, what makes me powerful is my position. Somehow, I always tell women, I said, if a billionaire or a CEO of a billionaire company was coming to your house and a janitor, would you clean your house the same? It's a great question. But if we ask ourselves, well, if I think that billionaire is valuable, she's more important than me, then I probably don't see my value, right? We start to what? Look at people differently. They look a certain way, they're better than me. We live in this state of comparison. We think money was what makes us valuable. And so it poisons our self-worth. And guess it's all happening neurologically. So now your daughters, your granddaughters, and us, it's happening subconsciously. We walk in the room and we're sizing women up and be like, oops, she's got the one that's this, and PhD this, and she's got this. And it's become so automatic. We are exuding comparison when we should be exuding grace of God. Not because we want to, but we don't know how to. We have been falsely conditioned that our value is based on all the external things that makes us valuable. But the problem is that the same metric that you hold of other women is the same metric that you hold of yourself. So no wonder women feel like they're not good enough and they're constantly proving and pleasing. But the reality is that every woman is born valuable. We have to give women evidence of their value, and we have to help them rewire their brain neurologically. We have to tell them that their DNA is so unique to them, that they're unrepeatable, that they're born in a very unique time in history. Nobody will ever be them, that the combination of their genes and their parents and their experience makes them unrepeatable and irreplaceable. We have to actually create a cultural movement of helping women rewire their self-worth. Just like you learn a new language, you learn that your worth is unconditional. You rewire that all day and every day through the process of neuroplasticity. That's what we do in our school. Because if your woman doesn't know her value, how could she truly make the right choices for herself? Right? And so we have to teach them at a very young age that their worth is unconditional. And then we have to equip them with the human information that's necessary to make sure that they know how to honor their value and that they have the skills. Number 3, studying the desires of our heart. Who here studies the desires of our heart? I go through this, Maria, she's in our school. So we go through this process in women's school. I do trainings kind of all day with women. And one of the things that I initially do is this a worksheet that goes what you want and don't want. You kind of see it, right? And so I go around your self-image. What do you want and what do you not want about who you are? What do you want in your health? What do you not want in your health? What do you want in your friendship? What do you not want in your friendship? What about your intimacy? What do you want and not want? And what about your contribution? Maybe you're a stay-home mom, maybe you're a working mom. What is it that you want? What do you want in your home and not want? What about your wealth? What about your family life? And so what it does is that it helps women to discover the desires of their heart. It helps them to say, well, why do I want this? And it's so interesting to me. We have this part in our brain called a reticular activating system. Anybody familiar? God designed this part of our brain called reticular activating system. It's called RAS. What we focus on expands. So if I'm looking for a white SUV, all of a sudden I start to seeing all the white SUVs. I never saw it before. Because your reticular activator, God put it in there and designed it to help you actually find what you're looking for. What do? We focus on what we don't want because we're afraid of disappointment, right? And so a lot of times when I do this training with women, I go through this training with them and I get usually 4 responses. When I say, what do you want and don't want? Usually I get a woman who's ferociously writing. I've never had to ask this question, Jane, right? They're going through every part of their arena. Number 2, usually a woman freeze. I've never had to ask this question. I don't even know what I want. I've been a mother for 30 years. I've never asked myself that question. I've got women who just cry out of frustration and anger that nobody asked her that question. And I've got women that are angry and say, why are you asking this question? It's irrelevant. All of which signals that there's something in our heart that's actually being suppressed. Because here's the truth. How do you discover your purpose? How does Mother Teresa, Mel Gibson, Focus, Charlie Kirk, how do you know what your purpose is? If you don't study the desires of our heart. The desires of our heart are a seed to our divine purpose, right? It's not, it's not an irrelevant way for us to understand. Now, our desires are not born always good. We either indulge in our desires or we ignore them, neither of which is healthy. We order our desires towards our highest good. But that requires, once again, a formation, right? We need to know how to study desires, because it's not just about doing whatever we want. We know it's not about unlimited freedom, but it's also not about no freedom. It's about studying our desires of our heart to discover what it is that God wants us in every arena, but also in every season of our life. How does a woman discover her dream? From the desires of our heart. What are we told? Motherhood is the death of our dreams, right? You can't be a good mom and also fulfill your dreams. How can you say to your daughter and say, you're the reason I gave up my dreams, but I want you to chase your dreams? Right? The desires of our heart reveal the dreams that God has placed in our heart. That my daughter can look at me and look at my pursuit of what it is that God is asking me, which is to build a human formation school for women. She sees me fail, she sees me cry, she sees me get up, she sees me try again. She sees me wanting to give up. She sees me work 4 o'clock in the morning to study. She sees me to do it while I'm raising 8 children. She sees the wrestle. And she knows that it's discovering what God has asked of you. Forming yourself to pursue what it is, because guess what? Dreaming comes before discipline. That the dream God has desired for you, He wants to fulfill through you. But see, dreaming and goal setting is different. In the women's school we talk about, dream is a vision of a future that flourishes, of something that you've never achieved before. It's a radical vision. You've never achieved it, right? Like in Amazon, nobody's ever thought of Amazon. It's something that's unique to you. It's exciting and scary at the same time. You don't know how to achieve it. It's different from a goal, right? A goal is ordered with metric. There's a deadline, but it's a vision. It pulls you. It requires faith to do something you've never done before. Faith in God, faith in yourself, faith in people around you, and it's ordered towards your higher purpose. So we need to start teaching women how to dream as a skill. Not this go to your dream but never show you how to dream. Be a good mom but never show you how to be a good mom. Have a great marriage. Be holy but never know how. Right? Because this is where we are. But the problem is that unprocessed and suppressed dreams leads to rebellion and depression. Because what happens is that you have a purpose that's unique to you. You were created before the beginning of time. God designed you with a unique purpose in every season of your life to fulfill what He has asked of you. And so what we have is that we lack formation, we don't know our value, we doubt ourselves, we don't study the desires of our heart. Guess what? Our dreams are constipated. It feels that way, but it feels restlessness. It feels like anxiety, like I'm not supposed to be doing this. It feels like what? Comparison, competition, self-doubt. And then we wonder why our children are not inspired by who we are, right? I mean, if I ask mother, are you inspiring your daughters? Are you inspiring your spouse? What does it mean to inspire? To breathe life. So we are called to be bearers of life. We literally have a womb to bring life. But what happens is that we can't give life that we don't have. We have a pro-life crisis. And I say, how could we ever win the battle of life when women today have no life? A woman cannot recognize life around her if there's not life within her. Our homes need to be full of life. Our marriages need to be full of life. So the formation that we need is essential, because what you offer this world, no woman can. And here's the kicker. There's a dream for every season of your life. There was a dream for me, when my kids are 4, kids under 4. There's a dream for me now. And our role is to rediscover it with and for God. Number 4, design a flourishing and integrated life. This is what we need to teach women. Because when I talk to women, I say, do you want peaceful, resilient children? Do you want them to be healthy? Do you want them to have a beautiful marriage? Do you want them to have a home that's full of life and inviting? Do you want them to fulfill their dreams? Do you want them to have more than enough so there's not living in scarcity? Do you want them to be in a marriage where they're admired? And you're like, oh yes, of course I do. And then I ask them, do you want it for you? And they say, I've never thought about it, January. We want it so much for our children, just as God wants it for us, to flourish. Right? But we don't want it for ourselves because we've never been taught how to. How can we blame women if they've never been shown how to flourish? Right? And so we're like, why is my life falling apart? This is kind of life by default, right? You're like, why is my marriage falling apart? right? Why? Because in order to create a beautiful house, you need a blueprint, right? You need an architect with God, right? It's not apart from God. But God also doesn't say, well, God, do everything. No, God requires us to all cooperate. And so we need a blueprint. We need to be able to design our life. How do you want every arena of your life? How do you want in every season? Because every season changes, right? How do you want your home? How do you want your spouse to look at you? I always tell women, describe me how you want your spouse to describe you. Never thought about it, January. Describe me what your marriage looks like and feels like in 5 years. Describe to me when you walk in a room, how do people feel about you? I tell my children, it's not what you tell them, it's how they feel about you. You know, because my kids are like, sorry, Mom. I was like, well, you said sorry 7%, your 38% is not really sorry. You know? But we have to understand that how we feel, how we make people feel matters. And so we need to start paying attention about how we want to design every arena of our life. How do we want to feel in that part of our life, right? Because a life here's the thing that I think is hard to hear for some mom is that if you want your child to live the faith you're living, then they have to love the life you're living, right? They have to be able to look at you and say, Mom, I'm just inspired by who you are. I don't know what it is, but I just love being around you. But the truth is that most of us are in a deficit. You know, if you feel like, oh, January, that's so far from where I am, well, welcome to where we all are, because we've all been deformed in some degree by the culture, right? But we have a choice right now to make a difference, because I believe that our world is finally ready for it, right? Strategy number 5, we need to restore language. In my house, it's what we call illegal words. Right? If you think about your home, how would you describe the language in your home? Is it positive or negative? Because you can't have a positive, life with negative words. If we tolerate criticism or making fun of each other or belittling somebody, this is the culture we live in. We have to ask ourselves, what is the language in our domestic church? What are the conversations that they're having? Because the conversation we're having, it shapes the culture of our own homes. So we need to understand back to the reticular activating system, right? We need to understand that words shape our perception. If I go to you and be like, blah, 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 you're like, what is that, January? But if I say to you a blue fridge, an image comes out, right? If I say to you an inspiring woman, what image comes out? If I say to you a stressed woman, what image comes out? So what we do is we have to understand that words have influence. Words become flesh. So we have to ask ourselves, what are the words that I'm using when I'm talking to my spouse? Maybe that's why I'm not so inspiring to him. Maybe I'm talking about myself all the time. Maybe it's about me, 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 me. We have to understand that words have consequence. And so what we need to do is teach women to use language. It's the first thing we do in the women's school is actually create a new language, right? From negative to positive, to general to specific. Oh, you're amazing. It doesn't land with the kids. We have to know how to compliment. These are skills. These are training. Nobody knows how to do it. It's just something that we're assuming we know how to do. Just because we're born a woman, that doesn't mean we know how to be one. Mozart had to train to be Mozart. Michael Phelps had to train how to be Michael Phelps. They had the potential to be Michael Phelps. But see, what is the potential that you're sitting with? And because of lack of formation, you're actually unable to fulfill what you were created for. Right? These are some of the illegal words that we have in our house. Often a lot of women take it. We replace the language in our culture. Go back, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, you can take a picture. Okay. And if in our homes we don't understand that 7% are words, 38% talent, 55% body language, it could be a really hard communication skill, right? We need to drill that in our conversation, especially with our spouses. We need to drill that in our conversations with our friends, in our community, in our work environment. We need to understand that we are what as women, nurturers. And so how we communicate either nurtures or actually brings death. This is something that we need training. And number 6, we need to create a grassroots movement of women, building communities of women studying together and growing together. This is the opportunity that we have. Right now we're saying, what's the new model of women? How are we going to train the next generation, beginning with my own formation, with my own training? How do we do it? We do it through communities. That's what we've done in the women's school, is that we have women all over the world studying together in community life, learning skill after skill, hundreds of skills. Can you imagine If we had thousands and millions of micro communities of women studying and growing together to reclaim what it means to be a woman for such a time as this, so that she's no longer overwhelmed, and now women can flourish, and guess what? She has greater capacity to say, what does the world need? I'm here. We have this woman, we have one of our groups of 50 women, and they've been in the school. They take our masterclass, which is a signature masterclass that gives hundreds of skills. And this class of hers, 50 women, they've been in it for about 2 or 3 years. Women take it over and over again. And she messaged me last week. She said, January, these women are now building businesses. They were once overwhelmed. They're now writing books. They were once overwhelmed. They're now changing the world because they now know how. They order their life. And I thought, that is what this movement is about. Because how else are we going to change it? Not through politics, right? All that can be influenced, but the reality is it's one woman at a time. The reality is that the world is going to change and hinges on your own formation, but also a community of women growing together. Can you imagine the magnitude of transformation if we literally reclaim what it means to be a woman, one woman at a time, through community life, growing together and studying together? That's the movement that we are trying to create in the women's school. Because how else are we going to change the world if we're not capable of changing our own interior world? I believe that the fight for women was, we had 200 years ago no freedom to now unlimited freedom. I believe the new movement is for interior freedom. The freedom to choose our highest and best self. That's the new woman that the world needs now. And so I want to introduce you to this woman that I believe we cast a vision. We have to cast a vision for this new woman. We have to replace the old model of women, and we have to share it to the ends of the earth. We have to know who she is. We have to have a model of woman that allows us to imagine who she is so we can aspire to be her, right? It's called the new woman because it's a new Eve, because she's our lady, right? She's that new woman, right? And the women's school, our school is available to every woman. It's available to women who have faith or no faith. Our language is ordered towards truth, beauty, and goodness. Like St. Augustine said, all things that are true are from God, and that's good. And so that's what we use in the women's school. And so I want to cast a vision of who this woman is for such a time as this, and why is it so important for us to become her, to form ourselves, enough humility to know that we haven't arrived. So who is this new woman? The new woman. In a time of moral confusion, a new woman has emerged, born from the ashes of a lifeless culture, called for such a time as this. Who is she? Who is this new woman? She is a woman who has become all things to all people. She was designed to nurture humanity and lead the way to restore human dignity. She's a leader, a servant, a mother, a teacher, a friend, and a warrior for truth, beauty, and goodness. She's intentional about becoming the woman she ought to be, working tirelessly to design a life that allows her to flourish in every arena and in every season of life. She's a woman of discipline and order, creating a rhythm of life that allows her household to flourish. Her children and her husband delight in her. She's a radiant light in her own home first. Her home is a refuge to many, a place of joy and laughter. She forms her character in the quiet duties of day-to-day life. She's a woman of excellence, choosing greatness over comfort. She studies her actions, reactions, and interactions, seeking to master herself in all the little ways. She knows when to say yes and when to say no. She knows when to ask for help and when to receive. She respects her body and honors her need for rest and restoration. She does not command anything that she has not first demanded of herself. Her sacrifice is redemptive, and her life is marked with generosity. She seeks the goodness in people, believing in who they can be while respecting them in their own journey. She does not blame or shame. She brings light to those people whose lights have been dimmed by the tides of life. Her light is undeniable. It shines, it radiates. To some, she is blinding, but only because her mere presence is an accountability for good. She is patient and persistent at the same time. She is a woman of action, determined to do her part to raise the moral fabric of culture. She's a fierce defender of faith, family, and freedom. She is not afraid to speak up, but she knows when to listen. She studies her critics and harvests wisdom from their rejection. She's willing to be misunderstood, to do what is noble and righteous. She's a good steward of her time, treasure, and talent, using them to bring forth good. She focuses on what matters most, fixing her gaze on her eternal destiny. She's a woman of contradiction, genuine but not naive. She's kind without compromising her standards. She's a loyal friend who's not afraid to hold you accountable. She's decisive while also being detached from the outcome. She's neither rigid or passive, enabling or entitled. She is merciful, quick to forgive, and slow to anger. She does not take herself seriously, laughing at her own mistakes. She's not a victim to external circumstances. She redeems all things for the good. She is wise, not because she's all-knowing, but because her heart is rooted in humility. She's a woman of courage, not because she lacks fear, but because she faces fear with faith and hope. She's a light because all things flow from the source of her light. She fears God above all else. She's a woman fully alive. She is loved, revered, respected, and valued because she values so many. She's meek, not weak. She's strong, yet tender. She's beautiful because she inspires life in all people. She's a reservoir, a pillar of unshakable strength. She's both a student and a master. She is extraordinary in all the ordinary ways. Each day, she dies to her old self, giving rise to a new woman. She was made for such a time as this. She's the woman that the world needs now. You are the woman that the world needs now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.